So what is the difference between hacktivism and cyber warfare, and how does that explain what makes the Syrian Electronic Army unique?
Hacktivism, generally speaking, is something that doesn't involve state resources. It's something by some state actors who are looking to influence policy or whatnot. When we're talking about cyber warfare, we're talking about deliberate actions of sabotage aimed usually from state to state or sponsored by a state. Sometimes hacktivism can start blending in or bleeding over into cyber warfare, where we see individual actors who are launching attacks, suddenly launching mass-scale attacks on the scale that we would normally expect from a state.
So what sort of targets does the Syrian Electronic Army try to hit?
When the Syrian Electronic Army first began, its targets were small scale. It was looking at dissident figures from Syria. It was looking at Western media and Western journalists and attempting to silence those voices that were hostile to the Syrian government. But as time went on, the targets that this group was going after scaled upwards. And rather than just journalists, it started looking at senior leadership figures from hostile states, including the United States. And the group was actually able to breach individuals at the executive office of the president.
So who are these people? Are they government employees? Are they enthusiastic citizens? Are they enthusiastic members of the Syrian diaspora?
They are Syrian nationals. They live inside of Syria. I think a more interesting question is, what exactly are their ties to the Syrian government? We obviously know that they're sponsored in some respect because they're inside of Syria. They continue to operate from Syria, and the Syrian government has made no effort to stop them or interfere, despite the fact that the U.S. government and others have called for their extradition. Beyond that, we don't really know. The group has talked about disclosing information to individuals within the Syrian military and intelligence infrastructure. They've never named those individuals. They've never really outlined the nature of that relationship, and the U.S. government has been somewhat coy about it.
So what have they accomplished? What are some of the high-profile operations they've carried out, and how serious are they from a national security standpoint? How worried should people be about them?
You know, in the beginning, I think it was easy to write off the Syrian Electronic Army. The targets they were going after were fairly low scale. I mean, they were trying to jam people's Facebook accounts, and they were trying to create, hashtag campaigns and stuff like that. This is not something that you would really be in fear of or something that would represent a threat. But at the end of the tail, if you look at the end of the timeline, these folks got very good at what they're doing. And these days, they're supposedly, anyway, deploying advanced malware to track and record the activities of enemies of the Syrian regime. And, if these folks are able to do that, and, albeit using somewhat basic methods, they were able to, again, breach the U.S. military, the executive office of the White House, or the president, being able to take control of social media accounts for many, many major Western media sources and corporations. This is not someone you can really write off.
And what do you think the Syrian Electronic Army can tell us about the future of technology and conflict in the Middle East?
I often look at the Syrian Electronic Army as an example of how cyber warfare has become democratized. The tactics of cyber warfare have become democratized, around the world. Not too many years ago, the idea of a state doing what the Syrian Electronic Army has done, these kind of actions would have been assumed, okay, yes, states, but top-tier level states, like the United States or maybe Western European governments. These kind of major operations did not seem to be within the realm of possibility for, the government of a failed state, certainly like Syria, or even individual hacktivists or cyber hacktivists looking to, create a wave of activity. It's not just us that has the capability of doing this now. Stuxnet is really something of the past now. Everyone can pull a Stuxnet.